There are so many different hashtags that are trending on social media, including Trudeau must go, Butts must go, and sheer insanity. Is this thanks to concerned Canadians leading up to the federal election, October 21st, or is it thanks to bots? Joining me now to discuss this is one of our political reporters, Brian Lilley, joins me from Toronto. Brian, are the hashtags thanks to bots, concerned voters, or both? Also, maybe explain to our viewers what exactly a bot is.
A bot, it's an automatic Twitter account that tweets out normally at beyond human rates. You know, people that are tweeting hundreds of times a day. Is that really a person back there behind that strange account that just started following you and is retweeting everything or attacking everything you say? Look, there's been stories in the media about how the conservative, the Trudeau must go hashtag, that was done by bots. And if you read some of the stories, you would think bots are just being used to support conservatives or to attack liberals. Let me tell you, as someone that's been on Twitter for more than a decade, they're used by all sides. And I am sure that there are fake accounts and bots being run by both parties, either officially or unofficially. Both parties, maybe the NDP and the Greens are into this, I don't know, but definitely the Liberals and the Conservatives. There are liberal Twitter accounts that attack everything I say. And they will be up in the middle of the night. They will be up all day long just attacking what I've tweeted out. There's no way that this is a real person. It's a fake account. Yeah, I'm sure that some of the Trudeau must go was driven by bots, but I'm sure that some of the blocked by Rempel, which was a popular hashtag this week, was driven by bots. And there's also the fact that, a lot of concern among conservatives that social media sites are biased. And that is something that's been out there for a long time, and that especially in the United States after the 2016 election was proven to be true, at least in the case of Facebook, to be sure, that they were out there promoting liberal or Democrat ideas and tamping down on Republican or conservative groups.
Brian, Butts is back. We talked about Butts must go. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's right-hand man and a focus of the SNC-Lavalin scandal. Gerry Butts is back. Is that a good or a bad thing?
It depends on which side of the fence you sit on, or it could be good and bad for both. If you're a Liberal supporter, you might be really happy that the guy that helped orchestrate the 2015 election win is back in the fold. The guy that was a steady hand on the rudder for Justin Trudeau's ship during the first several years of government, that he's back. You also might be concerned, if you're a Liberal, that this brings back up the SNC-Lavalin scandal. By the way, you want to flip that over? The Conservatives love that Butts is back because they get to bring up the SNC-Lavalin scandal again, which is what he resigned over. But as far as them being concerned, is this bad news for the Conservatives? It could be, because Gerry Butts knows what he's doing. So it's both good and bad for the two main parties, and it's bad for the NDP because they're still trying to gain traction somewhere, anywhere, please. So it's going to make it more interesting. Does the public still care about the SNC-Lavalin scandal? Some do, some don't. Some are going to walk by. But we did see during that, especially with the way that Justin Trudeau treated Jody Wilson-Raybould and Jane Philpott, that women started to tell pollsters, I'm not voting for this guy. And he was down in the polls among women for a long time. I don't think he's gotten all of that support back yet, by the way. And Gerry Butts was a part of that. So there's risk on both sides for all the parties involved.
Speaking of the polls, what's the latest? Where did the Tories stand, the Liberals, the NDP? And how about the Green Party with Elizabeth May and Warren Kinsella jumping on board the May ship? Are they doing a lot better now, too?
It depends on which poll, and I'll tell you why. Because some pollsters prompt you, when you're going through a poll, either a phone poll or online, you'll be prompted, do you want to vote for the Liberal Party, the Conservatives, the NDP, or the Greens, or if you're in Quebec, the Bloc? And they rotate them so that it's not you're not picking the first party every time, or to deal with those people that are always just hitting one. The parties are rotated through. Some pollsters do not prompt for the Greens. They will say Liberal, Conservative, NDP, or other. And then if you select other, then you're given a whole list of other parties: Greens, People's Party of Canada, the Maxime Bernier Party, and some other choices that you can make. On polls where the Greens are prompted, they do better. When they're not prompted, they're lower. And John Wright, who is with Dart Insight, he tells me that he does the other, followed by, you get your choices of other parties, because when he prompted for the Greens, they always did better than they did on ballot on voting day. And when he did it the other way, then they would actually be similar to what they would get at the ballot box. So as far as the Conservatives and the Liberals, the Conservatives are ahead in Ipsos, in Angus Reid, in Dart. Uh, it depends on, that are the Conservatives being heard a bit in Ontario by Doug Ford and the Ontario PC government? A bit. They're buoyed in Alberta and Saskatchewan and Manitoba. They're doing pretty well in Quebec. But the Liberals still hold a lead in Quebec. They hold a lead in Atlantic Canada, and they're competitive in British Columbia. So it's really going to be a series of regional races that decides this. It's not going to be a big national campaign.
And Brian, it seems hard to believe, but the federal Liberals are making the Canada Food Guide an election issue and are attacking Andrew Scheer's criticism of it.
Yeah, this is, trying to appeal to the people that the Liberals think voted for them to bring back the law-informed census in the last election. If you voted for the Liberals to bring back the law-informed census, you were bringing back the law-informed, or you were voting Liberal anyway in the last election. That was not a vote driver for swing voters, which is what all the parties are pitching to. The parties are not pitching, to a degree, they want to keep their base on side, but they're always pitching for those swing voters, those people that'll switch between the various groups or who maybe didn't vote before. The long-form census isn't going to be a driver for that. The Canada Food Guide is not going to be a driver for that. But I can't believe that the media spent, 6-7 days now since Andrew Scheer made his comments that all he said was he would review this because the dairy farmers are upset. Milk and dairy used to have its own category within the Canada Food Guide. It's no longer there. Milk and dairy products like cheese and butter are downplayed. And they say, well, wait a minute, this was done by people that have a bias against dairy. Find me 5 dietitians and I'll get you 10 opinions. It's like lawyers. Lawyers and dietitians, there's a lot of debate and dispute about this. So for the Liberals to come out and say, we're purely about science and we only make decisions based on science, I don't buy it. And if that were the case, by the way, they wouldn't have blocked Porter Airlines from expanding the Island Airport in Toronto. They wouldn't have blocked the Northern Gateway pipeline from going through with a tanker ban off the BC coast. They wouldn't have blocked Energy East by saying you've got to account for upstream and downstream emissions to be able to go through Quebec when a pipeline that Quebecers want doesn't have to do that. Don't tell me you're all about evidence when the record shows otherwise.
Brian, after a full 40 years after the Liberals took power, they've moved to replace the aging CF-18 fighter jets. Tell me more about that.
Aging CF-18 fighter jets. Let me tell you about this, Hal. These jets are coming up on their 37th birthday this October. 4 days after the election is the 37th anniversary of Canada getting its first delivery of the CF-18. The hit song on the Billboard charts back then was a brand new song from John Cougar, not John Cougar Mellencamp, John Cougar, a little ditty about Jack and Diane. That was the new hit back then. A guy named Justin Trudeau, our current PM, he was 10 years old and his father Pierre was still prime minister. That's how long ago we got these things. So the Liberals promised in the last election they're going to scrap the Conservative plan to buy the F-35s. If they hadn't, we would have new fighter jets by now. Instead, they scrapped that. Then what they did was they said, we're going to buy some used Australian jets. They did that. Now they've announced they're going to have a new competition. So there's 4 companies allowed in: Saab out of Sweden, Airbus out of Britain and France, Boeing and Lockheed Martin out of the United States. They have to have their proposals in by spring of 2020. And you think, okay, so we'll get a fighter jet just after that. No, they'll pick a winner in 2022, and then they'll take delivery sometime in 2025. So not after the next election, but after the election after that. So claiming that we're going to get new fighter jets is really disingenuous. It's going to be a long time before our fighter pilots see new jets. Already, these pilots are far younger than the jets we asked them to fly. And I think that is despicable. Look, the Conservatives should have done this when they were in power. They lost interest in the military because it's not enough of a vote getter. They were gung-ho at the beginning. They saw it was causing them headaches. They backed off a bit. The Liberals aren't committed to the military. But my view is you ask the men and women in uniform to go into harm's way for you, then you equip them properly.
Brian, there has been a lot of questions about the escape of a meat cleaver killer from a mental health institution, and then he escaped to China.
Yeah, this is a guy named Sheving Kong. He's a 47-year-old. He arrived in Canada in 2010. He was a permanent resident. In 2014, he used a meat cleaver to kill his roommate, hacked him to death. It was brutal, brutal murder. But Kong suffers from schizophrenia. Um, I'm not sure if he has other mental health issues, but he was found not criminally responsible. So he went into a place called the Center for Addictions and Mental Health here in Toronto. He was there for the past 5 years. He was deemed by an organization called the Ontario Review Board. They're supposed to evaluate you and see if you still fit within the not criminally responsible system. He was deemed to be a significant threat to reoffend in May. And for some reason, the people at the CAMH decided to let him out at the hospital. They gave him a day pass. He somehow got a passport, somehow got the money for a plane ticket to China, and fled that day. So there's questions about who helped him get his passport, who helped pay for his ticket, who helped him get to the airport. The guy speaks very little English, has very few connections in the community. There's questions about why the police waited 11 days to say anything. And so there are an awful lot of questions surrounding this case. And then this week, another not criminally responsible, dangerous offender who was in for doing armed robberies escaped. Thankfully, police picked him up the same day. But we're finding out that this place may not be the location to put these dangerous offenders who are found not criminally responsible due to mental illness. According to several reports, that they are escaping on a regular basis.
Michael Spavor and Michael Kovrig have been detained in China for more than 200 days. Many believe it's in retaliation to Canada detaining Meng Wanzhou, the Huawei executive. Now, Huawei Canada has announced a partnership to build 4G wireless in our country's north.
Yeah, linking dozens of communities in the north that simply don't have great wireless or internet access. And they're saying, okay, we're going to partner with communities. We're going to go in there and invest. And normally you'd say this is a great thing. But there is a lot of concern about giving Huawei too much access to the infrastructure for our wireless communications, allowing them into Canada's networks because of claims that this company, this organization, is far too close to the regime in Beijing. There is debate among our Five Eyes partners, that would be Canada, United States, Britain, Australia, New Zealand, about do we let these guys in? Because we share a lot of intelligence and we share them over the communications networks that we'd be allowing Huawei to be part of. And this could leave not only Canada vulnerable, but then our allies vulnerable, but specifically with this attempt to go into places like Nunavut, Nakalawit, this is going to leave the North vulnerable. I'm not sure that this is a good idea. I've been long a proponent of keeping Huawei out. This is an issue that goes back to the Harper years for sure. I can't remember how far back, Hal, but I do remember covering it. And various governments have had different, the two different governments have had different views on it. But I think right now there's definitely a standoffish position from the Trudeau Liberals. I'd rather they keep that. I'd rather this deal didn't go through.
Yeah, many people are concerned about security issues, definitely. Now, I have some questions for you about 24 Sussex. No one has lived there since the last election, but it's still costing taxpayers plenty of money, and now the federal Conservatives are raising concerns.
Yeah, they're saying that, look, Justin Trudeau should have moved on this. Now, is it fair to blame this on Justin Trudeau? 24 Sussex Drive, like all the official residences, and we're talking about Rideau Hall, where the Governor General lives, we're talking about Stornoway, where the official opposition leader lives, the Citadel in Quebec City, and Harrington Lake, the Prime Minister's summer home. Those are all maintained by an organization called the National Capital Commission, that if you've never lived in Ottawa, you've never experienced how frustrating and bureaucratic an organization this can be. They're in charge of doing this, but the Prime Minister can have a bit of say. Stephen Harper famously said he would not move out to allow renovations to take place. Back then, Sheila Fraser, the Auditor General, said it would cost about $10 million to fix up 24 Sussex. Now we're talking about a price tag for all of the official residences that I just listed off of about 100 million. And some of them are taking place right now at Rita Hall. That's why the Governor General is not living there. But others have not taken place. And these are beautiful homes, but they're in awful condition. The Prime Minister moved into a different home so that renovations could move forward. Nothing's happened. He could at least be applying pressure to say, you've got to get something done. That doesn't appear to have happened. And unfortunately, we're still paying the bills because guess what? That's where they cook his meals every day. They're still cooked over at the kitchen at 24 Sussex Drive and driven across the street for him and his family or guests or whatever. We're still paying huge electricity bills for the place and keeping the lights on, essentially. So it's costing us a lot of money. It's not getting fixed. And the price tag to fix it just goes up and up.
Maybe the Prime Minister just needs to skip the dishes. You know, maybe I don't know. We'll see. One of our regular contributors, Brian Lilley, joining me once again from Toronto. Thanks so much, Brian.
Thank you.